Hey everyone, it's Ariel back again. Day 14. It's officially been 2 weeks since the start of this challenge. Um, Today was kind of like, it started out really rough, and it's kind of gotten better over the course of the day. I think I just woke up in a really bad mood, just like big headache and the such. And, my wife was also not in a good mood in the morning. So, like, mix those things together, and it's just like, eh, you know. But things got better. Nothing like a little movie can't fix. Yeah, so it was nice to be able to just like sit on the couch with my wife and just like watch a movie together. It's nice. I enjoyed that. So move back up a little bit so you guys can actually see me. But day 14 is I think it's a milestone for me because it's kind of like a halfway mark through this challenge, and I think I was like really productive today in regards to like housework and cleaning and things like that. Like much more than usual, I should say. There's definitely a ways to go. But what I used to do would be literally I would clean one thing and be like, up, time for a break, and then I would be on YouTube, and then 2 hours would go by, 3 hours would go by, just like that. And now that that's not the case, like I get to like keep doing things, which taught me that I have a lot more energy than I thought. Like I was definitely feeling really drained and tired and fatigued during the early stages of this challenge. I think after 2 weeks, it's gotten better. Like the fatigue has gotten better, where I feel like I have more energy. I wouldn't say I have like a pep in my step or anything, but it's like there is a noticeable difference in kind of my overall energy levels throughout the day and kind of mood throughout the day. It's definitely felt like I've been more stable. I feel like I'm starting to kind of level out a little bit, which is good, I think. And yeah. But I made a pretty bad scheduling error today. I was supposed to have a meeting. I had a thing that I need to do. There's like a community thing that I do. At So, I was asked to help out with this thing at 12, and I thought it was at 3 because they were like, oh, here are the options. Friday 3 p.m., Sunday 12 p.m., and I just mixed up my times. And, I'm just being okay. Like, I think I just gotta, like, forgive myself for that and be like, yeah, sometimes you just fuck up. But, I feel myself getting sharper, kind of from like in terms of from like a memory perspective, kind of being able to catch things in the moment, take care of the things as they come up. It really still feels like I'm so far behind because of just the years and years and years of just like neglect of like personal responsibilities. And it's definitely daunting because sometimes it feels like I'm operating from trying to catch up my life from like 10 years behind. When I know that that's not true. I've made it as far as I have, through the grace of Hashem and through my own, thank God, my own perseverance and resilience. And it's not that I'm as far back as I, think that I am. So, I'm just putting the actions together one step in front of the other. And, I'm realizing that being an adult is just like having to take care of the small things as they come up, that if you don't take care of them, they become insane headaches. An email you don't respond to, a mail that you don't, like not checking your mail for long enough. Things like that, could really, really fuck you up. And I'm glad that I haven't really experienced like the real dire consequences of that. But like, I've come close a few times, And I'm just grateful that now I'm getting into a place where I'm actually able to like stay ahead of the curve a little bit. Not even stay ahead of the curve, keep with the curve. I was so behind the curve. I forget about being ahead of the curve. I got to be with the curve. And that probably made no sense. But basically what I'm saying is, I feel like I try so hard to exceed expectations that I forget that sometimes you just have to meet them. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. And I'm learning to be okay with just meeting expectations. I don't always have to exceed expectations. I could always just meet expectations. I think part of me always wants to go above and beyond and just be an overachiever, because I feel like that's how I have to be to like be successful. Which might be true in some regards, but I think trying to apply that to every aspect of your life is just not feasible and not possible. And I feel like you have to be selective with where you're an overachiever. If you are, because it really does put a strain on your focus, on your energy. Like it really is something that really pushes you, and you can't just do that with every aspect of your life, I feel like. At least is what I think right now. And I was able to pray 3 times, all 3 times. I mean, I did it yesterday as well, but like I made it out to Mincha and Arvit. That's the afternoon and evening prayers. In a minyan, which is basically in a synagogue with a total of 10 men or more. So I was able to say Kaddish for my mom, which is the prayer that you say when you're mourning a loss. So meaning that because it's a parent, I have to say Kaddish for the year after my parent passes away. So I've already lost my father, so I'm kind of unfortunately used to this. But it's definitely a lot more demanding when you're in the Shana, when you're in the year after a parent passes away. All of the rules that come with that and all the obligations that come with that is definitely really, really hard. It's extremely difficult. Mourning practices like MOU, mourning practices in Judaism are very heavy. And I know that they're like that for a reason, because it's to allow us to really actually experience the grief instead of just trying to bury it and like hide it. Like I don't know how other cultures do it, because I'm actually really grateful that we have such an intense it's such an intense process of bereavement, because I feel like it kind of like lets you deal with it in a healthy way and then to move on. And yeah, I think this morning was hard. I was just feeling pretty sad, and I feel like I was just experiencing grief, and just missing my mom. And I think a lot of times I kind of relive, and thank God therapy is great. Just reliving like her last moments, and it's something that like kind of I just like experience from time to time, is like reliving those moments, and it can be very distressing. But I think I've kind of been learned to just kind of ride that wave and just just be like, this is what it is. And something that when I was like really into YouTube, I would say about 40% of the content I was consuming was self-help content, which I think is so ironic. Meaning that like the thing that I was trying to improve about myself, I was almost outsourcing to these YouTube channels, where by virtue of watching these people improve their own lives, I felt gratification from that, as if my life was progressing when it wasn't. And there was a reason why I mentioned that. I think I mentioned that I lost my train of thoughts, and I'm trying to like backtrack and be like, I think I was trying to go somewhere with that, but it kind of escaped my grasp. And hmm, yeah, I'm not too. I forget where I was gonna go with it, but I think now the kind of the new direction I want to take it into is to kind of be like how I view this channel. Um, this is not a self help channel. I'm not here to like tell you this is how you improve your life. Um, if anything, I think that something that is kind of important to kind of see where I'm at is that I'm someone who's struggling myself, and to be for people to be able to see that and like just realize that like most of us are in this position. Most of us are struggling with something, and some of us are struggling really badly with something, and that was the case with me. From previous videos, you guys have probably learned a little bit about my backstory, about my childhood and things like that, and some of the hardships that I've faced in my life, and which I've been incredibly grateful for, right? Because I am where I am now because of everything that I've been through. I'm the culmination of my experiences, and you know I'm I want to think that I'm proud of who I'm becoming, and I'm proud of the skill sets and the intellect that I have, and the gifts that I've been given. No matter how big or small, those gifts are, really, just nothing but gratitude. And yeah, this is not a self help channel. This isn't it. I never wanted it to be, and I don't think I don't ever want it to be. And if there's a point in time where I start to, uh, God forbid, turn this into a self improvement channel, because I really do think that, like, while there is good in self improvement, it's an industry, right? So like, what made me realize this was kind of the I think this is the point that I was trying to get to, was that self help as an industry, right? If it really worked, meaning that what the industry spouts out is just do these things, and there's the self exoneration that's going to happen. All of your problems will just go away like that. When in reality, as you kind of test out the different tools, and tools of the trade of self improvement by consuming material and kind of applying it to your own life, it's not so drastic a lot of the time. It's not so, and also a lot of times, people figure out really weird ways to like, figure shit out. There's no one way to do anything, in regards to like, improving yourself, right? Like, kind of like I told you, like, getting up in the morning. My friend literally started like just making like a little coffee sludge thing the night before and just chugging it first thing in the morning. I said that in a previous video, and which is like, that worked for him. It literally, like, to this day, he gets up early in the morning, he's able to do what he needs to do, right? Like, and like, no self-help bullshit could have taught him that. You know what I mean? And I think that, again, like, in reality, let's say that if self-improvement, the industry actually worked in systemic ways that it wants to, right? Meaning that, the people that watch it, let's say that, if 1 million people are watching these types of videos and buying books, and buying books, Tim Ferriss, and I mean, because I literally have so many of their books here from when Tim Ferriss, James Clear, Tony Robbins, like, just like, so just all those guys, which I think all those guys kind of fit into like one big massive umbrella. This is not to criticize them, but this is just me making an observation from an institutional level, and from an incentive level, meaning that, let's say 1 million people consume that kind of material, and let's say that 70% of them, for them it works, or for most, for most of them it works, right? They're not going to be coming back to those people, right? Because if it's touted as these people are marketing it as just being transformed, right? just being transformed, and like everything is great in their life now, and they're just like everything is wonderful, everything is, like I all the weights I had on my shoulders in my entire life are now just lifted off me, and I'm a newborn person. If that was the case for the vast majority of people, you wouldn't really see, like, those people wouldn't come back, you know like the vast majority of people, and this is all anecdotal, so take this with a Himalayan level of salt, um, is that, right, like when I see people who tout this stuff, and including me at some point in my life, I was just I kept coming back because I kept feeling I didn't get that level of exoneration. I did not get that epiphany that is, so convincingly, um almost like facetiously so, in these books, in these videos. And it made me realize that, like, real good change, especially throughout this challenge, it takes a slow amount of time, like a really slow amount of time. I'm starting to really notice like marginal improvements like 2 weeks in, which is still a pretty short amount of time, sure, but it's not overnight. And I think that's what people expect. I think that's what a lot of people, I shouldn't say expect, it's what they wish for. It's what, like, I'm not talking to myself right now. It's like I wished for the instantaneous, epiphany moment where, it's like in those like stupid like rom-com movies where like the guy realized that he fucked up, so he has to go like run to like the airport to like go propose to like the girl in the film, right? Or some shit like that, where there's just like there's a massive like reality shift that happens in an instant. And that doesn't necessarily, that's not really how life works, is what I'm starting to see. And funnily enough, I think the way that I'm talking, I think kind of shows me that, like, out of all the self-help shit that I've exposed myself to, probably the most like realistic, and I would say helpful out of all of them, I think, is Atomic Habits, because it doesn't tout itself as like, change yourself in a day type shit. Like, it's like 1% better. Even though, like, the whole like 1% better, like, what does that really mean, right? Like every day, does that mean that, like, like I'm increasing the number of pages that I'm reading in my book every day for 1%, by 1%? And like, that sounds great and everything, and he kind of shows how like growth is not linear but rather exponential, which is a cool theory, but I feel like that kind of fails to kind of capture more of the nuanced kind of viewpoint, which is like there's going to be moments where you hit ceilings, for long stretches, and that it's really not like you just zoom upwards, at a certain point, like, like you struggle, and then you go, phew, which, again, who knows, maybe I'll experience that at some point, and I'll be like, you know what, James Clear, you're right. But at least from my own experience, and like from kind of like trying to think from a more pragmatic perspective, it seems like, progression in identity, in habits, in morals, things like that, values, it really is like, yes, like there's a really hard getting started period, and then there is like a moment of like really great growth, and then there's kind of like a plateau for a little bit, and then it goes up again, and then maybe like the gained is a little bit smaller each time, right? So you have to fight more to gain less, and which is cool, right? Like, for some people that's discouraging, But what that teaches me is that, like, you know, I think that when you look at it from a perspective of, like, you know, being 85% better, like the difference between jumping up from, like, 80 to 85% better might not feel as great as jumping from, like, 90 to 92% better, if you see what I mean. Like, it's very hard to gauge what better means, right? And I think for right now, I'm going to not think about it too much, because for me, I really want to kind of keep things simple in regards to this process, meaning that, I have the things that I don't do, right? YouTube, manga, video games, sugars and things like that, except for, like, natural sugar. And in addition to that, which is kind of a recent addition in a recent video, which was for me to do one hard thing a day, which I need to check in for today. What's, like, the one difficult thing that I did today? Today I did a lot of cleaning, and I did a lot of fixing. I built a mailbox today. I fixed the chairs. Like the legs of the chairs, they were all wobbly and stuff like that. So, like, I just, like, reinforced them and just, like, made them actually, like, not shit. And swept some floors, mopped some floors, cleaned some kitchens, made some dinner. Just, I think the hard thing was really, I think there's very little time where I was, like, on my phone, which is very, very great. And also, like, now, like, my, like, average usage of, like, screen time on my phone is 5 hours, which I know that sounds crazy, but I want you to know that I was up, before this challenge, I was between 8 to 9 hours a day, just to show you, like, how bad it was. So the fact that I'm down to 5 hours, as crazy as that sounds, still, to me, is a massive improvement. And if by the end of this challenge I can get to, like, sub 2 hours, that would be, like, amazing. That would be absolutely phenomenal. Because, again, that would just free up so much time for me. I mean, again, a lot of that time is also just, like, playing podcasts, like, in my car, or, like, playing podcasts while I'm, like, cleaning and doing shit. So, I mean, I also have to adjust for that, right? Because, like, each podcast episode is, like, 45 minutes, and, like, I could listen to, like, 3 of them a day as I do stuff, right? So that also has to be taken into account. But regardless, I'm really proud of myself for that fact. And I want to stick with just, doing one hard thing a day. I think that, like, eventually a long-term goal, not even, I'm saying, like, past this whole 30-day challenge, would be to eventually get to doing, like, I do 3 difficult things a day. Whether that's, like, going to the gym, taking a cold shower, or some shit like that, just, like, actually doing something that's difficult, and doing 3 of those things every day, I think will be amazing. And I know that just the jump from 1 to 2 would be insane, and from 2 to 3 even more so, because it's already hard for me to do one really hard thing a day, but I'm managing. And sometimes I have to be like, I didn't really do anything that was, like, too hard or this and that, but I have to, like, give myself credit and be like, no, I actually did do some pretty hard things compared to where I was before. It's just that I'm starting to find these things easier, and when they really seemed like insurmountable, tasks. So with that, I think I'll leave it here. Today was a little bit more of a rambly. I mean, all my videos are rambling, like, are just the the encyclopedic definition of rambling. But regardless, I really appreciate you guys listening, and stay tuned for tomorrow. All right, take care, be well.